one thing that you've learnt recently?
The quality of your relationships matters more than anything.
If you could give 18-year-old Lachie one piece of advice, what would that be?
You're good enough and you're loved.
A must-have item in your marathon kit.
Ball butter. I've only got it in the last week.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to M26 Fit, the podcast that powers your spirit, mind, and body. I'm Magnus Olson, and thank you for joining us today as we dive into stories and strategies from top athletes, health experts, and everyday warriors. We're here to inspire and challenge you to become the strongest, fittest, and healthiest version of yourself inside and out. So hit the subscribe button and let's get cracking on yet another exciting episode. All right, today on the M26 Fit podcast, we've got my guest presenter, Conrad Leisemann, and our first special guest, Matt Lancashire and Lachie Stuart. Welcome to the podcast, boys.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for having us on.
How are you, Mags?
Good, mate. Mate, I'm going to jump straight in. Now, Lachie, you've decided to do 58 consecutive marathons across 58 states in Australia and America, kicking off early next year. Mate, what the made you decide to do that?
I was firstly, thanks for having me on. I had a guest, James Lawrence, the Iron Cowboy, on my podcast, and hearing how he challenged himself, and he did 100 Ironmans in 100 days. Previous to that, he did the 50-50-50, which people have marathoned it and stuff before. And I asked him, I said, which one did you find harder? And he said the 50 for sure, because you're taken away from all your comforts and there's so many things that go wrong that you just can't find flow. And I was like, interesting. And he said it was such a great experience to see America, to see the world, but also learn a lot about himself and raise funds for a charity of his choice. And I thought, that'd be pretty cool. I'd love to do something like that. Every year for the last 7 years, I've done something to challenge myself, and it seemed like a good opportunity. And I was like, how can I put my own twist on it? And that's where I was like, no one's done the time zones, no one's done it in winter, so let's just make it extremely hard, extremely beautiful on the aesthetics of the camera, and then bring it home and finish in Australia with, where I guess family and friends and everything is. And that's how it started. And I got off that podcast, I messaged my brother-in-law. I was like, what do you reckon about this? He's like, I'd come along for sure. Asked my wife, she's like, no, that's not happening. Shot that down. Then I called Maddie, and Maddie's like, yeah, you should do that. You can't not do that. Let's do it. I'm in. And I was like, okay. I went back to my wife and said, look, Liam's in, Maddie's in. Come on. And then she's like, all right, well, you can have a crack at it. And I don't think she thought we would pull it together to be able to do it logistically, but here we are.
How long ago was that, Lachie? Like, I'm interested to know, like, when was that when you rang Maddie, you rang your brother? Is this 12 months ago?
Yeah, it was probably March this year.
So it was only 12 months, really, between having the brainstorm of it and getting it going.
Yep. But to be fair, I have been looking for what the next thing looks like. Yep. Previous to that, there's a one called the 777, which is 7 marathons in 7 days across 7 continents. So I was looking at that and I thought that could be fun, but then I was looking at various other things. So then after speaking to James and hearing how hectic it was, that was sort of the push that I needed. And then for me, the challenge then not only became about the run itself, getting the team, working out how we're going to be able to financially keep my feet on the ground, and learn a whole heap of stuff. And then even putting for me, an ambitious fundraising goal out. That was the scary part. So, like, for me, the run, which sounds weird, seems like the easy part. Everything else has been very scary, making sure you have the right people and just constantly getting comfortable with putting yourself out there.
So touch on that for a minute, mate. Like, when you talk about the fundraising part of it, or the actual, obviously we understand the physicality of what you're actually doing, but what's the actual, what are you trying to do? Who's it all for?
For mental health. So I've been, I guess, working and focused on improving men's mental health for at least the last 8 years with the company that I have and the podcast that I have. And we started a lot down the mental health route, and I've over time shift that to high performance, because I still believe they lead to the same thing. It's just a different interpretation or perception of it. And I think I love high performance more than I do dwelling in the uncomfortable stuff in mental health. And raising funds, so we're aiming to raise $100,000 for mental health, and obviously more importantly men's mental health. I saw you did a post the other day around the statistics. It's quite alarming. But to get people, one, talking about it, but for me, when I started my business, a lot of people were talking about it, but then you can only talk about it so much before you actually have to do something, and that's where we're hoping to get at least 2,000 people to start doing something different. And the process of getting active, getting around like-minded, empowered people, so having a good community, but also setting a goal can really help push people to get, I guess, more high-performance habits and lifestyle traits. You know, I'm fortunate to see how Matty operates at a high level from his career and how he is with his family, but then also never missing the gym when we're training together. And for me, I'm like, I believe I understand why he is so consistent, and that's what I've adopted into my life. And then having met plenty of other high performers, and I know you've interviewed a lot, Magnus, to see what that looks like, and then get everyday people like myself, an everyday person, through fitness to start proving to themselves that they are capable of more than they originally thought. And so as much as the awareness and the funds are going to do an incredible job for Frontline Support and the Mental Awareness Foundation, which is the charity, getting people together to maybe run their first 5K or set themselves a 58-day challenge to demand more of themselves is what we're looking to achieve.
That's awesome. And and it's so funny, isn't it, that you know, what you're going to do is hopefully going to inspire and motivate so many other people to get on board, work on their fitness, their health, everything. But often people that are inspiring like yourself, it starts from somewhere for your own journey. So you're 33?
33, yeah.
So you said you started in that mental health space 8 years ago. I'm really interested to know a bit of your story. Like, you're obviously 25 then. What suddenly made a 25-year-old wake up and go, geez, I want to start helping, you know, mental health and other men around me to be better? Was that something that you gone through yourself, or? Yeah,
and it starts a bit before that. So I grew up in Toowoomba and wanted to play professional rugby. That was what I'd always pursued, and I was fortunate enough to go play over in Europe, in France. And so I had a taste of that lifestyle, but part of the lead up into that point, you know, I was a bit of a womanizer. I lied, cheated, manipulated a lot. And I thought, you know, my partner at the time, she broke up with me, and I'm like, I need to get away from this pain. I don't know what's going on. And I thought if I went over and played overseas, she'd regret that decision and come crawling back. And what happened as a result of that is the first 3 months was amazing. You know, you're this Aussie lad in France, living the dream, and all of the same problems started reappearing. You know, the insecurities, the self-doubt, and I started finding myself in the same situations where I was treating people poorly, didn't like who I was. And so the cycle repeated itself until I found myself back in Oz, not knowing what I was going to do with my life. And I thought I was better. Like, I've always felt like I'm here to do something amazing. I wasn't quite, I thought that was sport, but when that was gone, I wasn't quite sure what that was. And my dad was a builder. He's like, you should come work for me. I'm like, I'm way better than an apprentice. Like, I'm not going to be a carpenter. For me at that time, I thought I was better than that, which is obviously my opinion's changed now because I did.
I was going to say, I'm a carpenter.
Yeah, well, I finished my trade and stuff, but it was just, I had this idea of success, and I really wanted to prove myself. And I think there was a lot of ego around where I was sitting from a status perspective and the amount of money that I earned. I think a lot of people, and men especially, can relate to that. You want to protect and you want to provide. And I found out pretty quickly that I didn't want to be a builder. And so I started trying to escape. I didn't have successful people around me outside of sport, really. So I got to a point where I was looking for access to conversations like this, people like this, where I could find out not only what it took to be successful, and when I say successful, I mean as a great father, living a great lifestyle, having great health, earning good money, but I wanted to find out what it was like in your head to achieve that, the sacrifices that you make, maybe the heated arguments that you have with your family, to know that I wasn't alone, because I thought that I was the only person experiencing the self-hatred and the lack of purpose, and I didn't really want to live. And I was very fortunate that I had my rock bottom moment, which was to do with drugs, drinking, and a bit of fighting. And a bloke gave me a book, and this was 2012 or 2013, and the book was the 4 Agreements. And if anyone's read it, very boring book. 4 Agreements, yep.
Yeah, right.
But he got it to me at a very pivotal time where I was just desperate for change.
Was he a mentor of yours?
I played rugby with him, so I respected him because he was a very good rugby player in England, and we were obviously playing back in Toowoomba at this point, so I wasn't great level or anything, but there was something about him that was different to everyone else that we were playing with, that he's like, mate, come to this event with me and read this book. And I was like, I've got nothing else going on. So I did that. And the book challenged me, said, be impeccable with your word. Don't make assumptions. I can't remember the other 2 off the top of my head. But it was the first time that I challenged my thoughts, and it came through a book. And I was like, interesting. And when I started challenging my thoughts, I got hungry to work out what else I could challenge. And that's when I started using Instagram to document, because lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, I met my now wife. So she's been with me since I was a crumb. I wasn't a very good person. Our first date, I was having a pie fight with someone in the valley, and she still came back for another date. So to be able to have her stand by me and watch how she lived her life gave me the inspiration to go, look, you can be a little bit different. You don't have to follow the traditional path. Trust your gut and just focus on being better. And just be honest with what's going on in your life. Like, most men don't talk about the challenges that they're facing. They don't understand how to express their emotions or even talk about what that feels like. And I started using Instagram to do that, and I all of a sudden built this following, and I had men and women reaching out being like, can you speak to my husband, or what was your experience like with this? And I remember I was in Austria and I was walking for a pint in a palmy, and I got this message from a gentleman, and it was at that point I'm like, I'm sick of getting the same bloody message. I'm going to run a men's group. And that was 2016. So I'd sort of been on my own journey for about 2-3 years at that point. And I'm like, righto, boys, this is what's happening. I'm doing a men's group in Brisbane, and I don't really know how it's going to go down, but everyone's welcome. And I started watching. We had men from all walks of life, young blokes like myself. We had doctors, lawyers, real estate agents coming in. We all shared and were able to give perspective or insights around what we're struggling with, and that's what I wanted. That was the thing that
was that a weekly or monthly gathering?
Yeah, monthly. So every month. And after a while, I started seeing the same people come back, and as empowering as it was, they were talking about the same stuff and they weren't doing anything about it. And so it started taking a toll on me, and I was like, this is very frustrating, because I'd come from a point where I was actively changing how I was thinking, acting, behaving. So to watch these men not do that, I was like, we've got to change something. And then I got into running workshops, and that really just sent me on a completely different trajectory. And I've watched so many men transform their life through action. And that's why, Connie, what you were doing with your men's group, the walk and talk and the kayaking is so powerful, because men often find the barrier to connection and expressing themselves is very uncomfortable. So if you can, when I say lure, that sounds the word, probably not the right word, entice them into an activity like a weekend away or fishing, camping, but then you get to introduce them to, I guess, more in-depth conversations and hearing how other men are struggling or wins that they've had. They understand that that's normal and that's what they've been wanting. It's like taking this weight vest off. And I guess, so from my own pain and struggles with my own mental health and having lost mates to suicide, as I know most of us have been impacted by that, I've just used my own journey to be better, to hopefully resonate with other people, to be like, look, it doesn't have to just be like that. There's another side, and whether you want to focus on poor mental health or high performance, the way to get out is through the same habits, whatever language works for you.
Absolutely.
It's funny, just to touch on that though, I mean, I know you're really passionate about this, and with your business and helping other men, if there's other men out there right now that are going through what you potentially were going through, and we've all been there, whether it's been at the bottom of the barrel with alcoholism or drug addiction, whatever it might be, or they just want to be a better person, what would be the one bit of advice that they could start tomorrow though? Like, when you were at that rock bottom point, and you obviously had great self-awareness for a young man to go, hey, I don't want to be like this, like I want to be better.
I don't think I had great self-awareness. I just think I had no other options.
People around you?
Yeah. You get to a point, and I think when people describe rock bottom, it's you sink or swim. And I didn't want to sink. I was sick of, I viewed myself as someone disgusting. I remember when I got arrested, I'm sitting at the bottom of these stairs, and I'm just looking at everyone looking at me, and I'm like, I'm not supposed to be in this position. That's not, went to a great school, had a great family, and I've fucked everything up. Yeah, I felt disgusted. And when you have that moment, you can either stay there and you can just sort of lean into that idea of who you want to become, which I had been doing for an amount of time. But then the alternative is like, I've got to make some big changes. And I literally stopped hanging out with the people I was hanging out with. I went like full extreme to the other side. So I wouldn't say I was self-aware. I definitely grew self-awareness when I started seeing results change. Yep. But I just knew that if I continued doing the same things I was always doing, I'd be in that position, and I wouldn't have had a great marriage. I probably wouldn't have had great friends, and I probably would not be here because I didn't want to live.
So what were the couple of those really big changes, mate, that you could share with us? Like, was it, I know you said about the people, like, is that how guys like Matt came into your life, for example? I mean, is that
so you look at people like Matt or some of the other people that I'm fortunate to hang around with. Tom Crockett, who gave me the book, we were probably hanging around with the same people. He was just a bit more strong-headed with what he wanted from life, had his own business and things. And for me, I knew after going to this personal development event, I watched a bloke who was talking about how he tried to take his life. He was a bricklayer. I'm like, I'm a carpenter. I'm one up on you. Therefore, if you can be up there, I can be up there. And so in that moment, and my mum still recalls it because I told her, I'm like, I'm going to speak on stages and I'm going to inspire people. I don't know how or what that looks like, but I know that I just need to get around better people. And it's very easy to sit back and go, okay, I'm going to do that. But then when you're coming from the place where I was, where I didn't offer much value, had, probably a drinking problem, a drug problem, those people like Matt probably wouldn't want to hang around with me because they understand the importance of environment. So I realized very early that I had to become better to add value to those, I guess, groups of people that I wanted to be around. Yeah. And so what that looked like in the beginning was I started, constantly listening to podcasts. I was a builder, but I'd be having my headphones in. I started going to, networking events like meetups. And then I started catching, this is the best, like I started Uber driving to learn to communicate better because I was a shocking communicator. And I'd catch public transport because I didn't have a network in Brisbane, just my wife's friends. So I'd get on the bus and I'd just sit next to random people with no headphones in. I'd be like, how you going? And just try and make friends with people. But it's weird now, but like getting out of your comfort zone, because a lot of people go, I don't know anyone, or they would never want to talk to me. But every single conversation I had built my confidence. It taught me new things about the world. And some of my, I remember there's a guy called Miles Smith who, Miles as well, but I met him in Uber. And then I met Jack Frost, who played for Collingwood and Brisbane Lions in Uber. And because I'd been flexing that muscle around inquisitive conversation and stuff, Frosty's like, mate, can I get your number? This is going to sound weird, and we became best mates since that. So my network was slowly growing. And Miles was the same thing. He's like, mate, I want to take you for a coffee and just understand what you're doing. And so slowly these people saw value in me because I was getting better. And that put me in the position where, once again, it's all perception. I've always been the same bloke. I believe I'm empathetic. I care about people. But I just needed, I guess, that validation or that evidence that I was worthy. And once I started seeing people, and then when I remember 2017, everyone spoke about Matty at the gym, like, Matty's the man, And I was like, cool.
That was Matty talking about it, wasn't it?
Yeah. You just hear it down the corner. Yeah. But you hear that, and then Bainey came up to me, who owns Functional. He's like, oh, Matty's interested in doing some training with you. You should give him a call. I think you reached out to me. And I was like, wow, that's awesome to have like a big wig want to train with you. And once again, it's just evidence. Not that you need the evidence that I've now realized, but I think for where I was at, I needed that validation and I needed that support to go, hey, Lachie, the things that you're doing, how you're showing up, people are noticing. So do more of it if you want to continue on that trajectory. And that's, for me, what I did. So when I didn't have the support network, I built a digital one. Things like, this podcast, if people are listening, this is all you need. You can tune in and listen to Magnus talking every week, or any of us every week or every day if you need it, until the people that you're surrounded with are talking about these things.
Yeah.
And that's all you need. I've made a board of directors with podcasts around different industries and different topics that I'll listen to every week, because I don't always get to get on the phone with people. I speak to Matty a lot. I speak to my brother-in-law, and I've got a great network now. I can talk about relationships, or I can talk about business, or I can talk about 58 marathons. And that's just coming back to, I didn't want to sink anymore. I wanted to start swimming. What does swimming look like for me? A better life. The definition of better life is constantly evolving, but it just means I want to feel happier, and I want to have more experiences, and I want to have people who genuinely care about me.
So how do you, just for listeners out there, because I hear so much of that and I couldn't agree more, just as far as that inner circle, the people that you hang around. So how did you, when you broke off with those previous relationships, just give us some conversation around that, just to be able to help our listeners that are in that situation. How do you get out of that situation?
I'll tell you how I did it, and I'll tell you how I wish I'd done it. So I have a great group of mates. Like, once again, we'd party a lot, but they were still awesome people, and they still are awesome people. But where I struggled was the rubber arm, and I know a lot of people struggle with that. I wanted to get away from drinking all the time, because when I drank, I'd play up, I'd get in all kinds of trouble, and rather than just going, oh, it's because of the booze, I realised it was the booze, so therefore cut the booze out. But all myself and my mates did when you're 22 to sort of 25 is you catch up and you drink piss. And so I'd always find myself in trouble. So what I did was I committed to, I think it was 7 or 8 back-to-back 16-week fitness challenges, because that was the excuse that I needed, because I wasn't strong enough within myself to say, hey, boys, I don't want to drink tonight. I want to do something different. I knew that if I didn't have an excuse, I would have drunk. So I was signing up for these challenges, and I just committed to doing those for literally like 2 years or whatever it was. And during that time, I started becoming more confident. I started building discipline. I started seeing different results, which made it easier for me to go, I don't want to go back to how I was living, but I still want to have the relationships with my mates, but I cut them fully out of my life. Yeah. My wife didn't meet some of my groomsmen now and my best mates for the first 4 years of our relationship because I just couldn't be around them. I thought, and to their credit, they've let me back into their life, but I thought I was better than them. I didn't want to be influenced by them, but there came a point where I was so lonely because your childhood mates are the best, right? You've got you go through so much through those formative years in your life that I had to, crawl back with my tail between my legs and be like, boys, I'm so sorry. Can we catch up for a beer? And even their wives were like, who the hell's Lachie? I've never met Lachie. Yeah. But now we've got a great relationship. So if I were to do it again now, I would just have different groups of social circles and sort of learn to whether you need to fully remove people from your life, and they're people that maybe don't make you feel good. They make you feel worse about things after your energy drains. There might be people that you want to distance yourself from, which probably would have been what I should have done at that point, just while I was trying to rebuild. Yep. And then there's people you want to really expand your time around because they're the ones who are having the positive influence on yourself in the direction that you want to go. Yeah. But now I still, I talk to my buddies every single week from all walks of life, which is awesome because you get to watch them from, Hogan who or various people. It's just like they've been in my life since I was 10. So to see them become dads and watch them change, it's a beautiful thing.
I love what you've done with the alcohol side of things. I've had my issues with alcohol over the years as well, and gave up 10 years ago. Fell off the wagon a fair few times since then, but tried to be fairly good the last year or two. We've just actually launched a challenge for people for having a dry 25, and we've had 10 people sign up already.
All this, yeah.
And just to me, from a power perspective, because I just notice as a society, it's the same thing. Like we generally try to catch up with people for breakfast because that's the one meal that you can catch up where there's not the pressure of, let's catch up for a beer or let's have a glass of wine. And it's so systemic in society today, isn't it?
It is, definitely. And I know, Matty, you did a year off the booze in...
I did 2018 off the booze.
Yep.
Great year.
Mate.
It's consistency, feeling good. I actually got really let down by people. Like I'd always say, let's do a training session, and then I'd be the only one that shows up on a Sunday morning, and it just really annoyed me. Yeah. But honestly, best thing I ever did. Like you're what, 9 months off? No,
I'm nearly 12. I'm 12 months in.
See, it's an interesting point because going back to what you were saying before with your mental health, and when you were, and a lot of it was around alcohol and drugs and stuff. But now that you're dealing with high-performing guys like Matt Lancashire and even men coming into your program in your circles, that's a big thing for you, isn't it, Lachie? Like if you can tell the listeners one bit of advice is commit to not just a training regime or getting fit, getting it more active, get rid of the booze, isn't it? It's not, and I think you said at our lunch last week, it's not about just giving it up for 2 weeks. Actually make a commitment, because I think you told a story about your brother-in-law, didn't you? Didn't he? You said to him, right, get off the booze for 12 months? Or
because when we moved to Nashville just over a year ago, and obviously Music City, Broadway is awesome time, and I don't drink much at all anyway, but when I'd moved over there, I was hitting it hard. Like every night we were just down at Broadway getting blind. And it was awesome fun, but my mental health was the worst it's been in probably 8 years. And I knew why. Obviously, it's you're drinking a bloody depressant, and then you're eating poor food choices, poor sleep. I was getting snappy at my missus again. And I knew that if I continued to do that, even though it's like, we're in a new country, we need to network, we need to do all of that. I'm like, that's just bullshit. You can still network, you can still make friends without that. And so once again, it's just upholding a new standard. And I had a guy, and probably be good for you guys to chat to, Rari Farban. So he did 1 year no beer. He started a company, and he was on Rich Roll recently. It was the most downloaded podcast of 2023, talking about men's relationships with alcohol, because especially in professional industries, it's like we close deals with booze or we do all of these sorts of things. And Rory was a commodities trader and one of the best in the world at it. And his marriage was falling apart because he was constantly drunk, constantly out at lunches. And so he knew that he had to get off the booze or he'd lose his family, and didn't want to lose his family. So then he said to his boss at the time, he's like, I'm going to give up the booze for 12 months. And he's like, his boss was like, good luck, you're going to lose all your business. No one's going to do business with you because you don't drink. And he's like, well, I'd rather keep my family than I would make the millions of dollars that I'm making. But what he was clever enough to do was start creating different events. So he'd hire out stadiums and invite all these people for different experiences. And what he actually did was he decreased his, I'm going to butcher the numbers, but let's just say he decreased his overheads by 30%, increased his profits by 70%, because everyone wanted to do business with him because it wasn't a lunch.
Boozy lunch, yeah.
It was something random and unique, and you never realised.
Wembley getting Beckham in to kick footy with their kids.
How good's that?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I stopped drinking after that.
Yeah.
After that podcast for a year.
Is that right?
Yeah.
See, how do you? So it's interesting, Matty, because like for the listeners that don't know, like you're the top performing real estate agent in Brisbane, but you're also married. You got 4 kids. Like, what now that you've given up alcohol for that year? How does it look alcohol for you after 2018 though? Because you're such a high performer. You're obviously big on your fitness. You've got to be on, every day. How does that look for you now?
See, I do things like Lachie, like I'm extremist. So I'm either on or I'm off.
Yeah, right.
And that's probably it's probably one of my biggest advantages and one of my biggest problems as well. So I always say that I'm 90% pure and then 10% bad. But I've realised that I've got an addictive personality, and that's
the thing is, so many of us are like that though, right? Like that's such that's why it's so good to hear from people.
And I wish I wasn't. And so I'm either on or I'm off.
Yeah.
And it's like, alcohol's one thing, but alcohol leads to many other different things, right? So, like you said, poor choices of food, you stop training, you get snappy, you just feel you're just not yourself. And I just make a decision that if I feel like I've had enough, I just don't.
So how do you handle that though in your home? Because you'd be doing like what Lachie said, a lot of your not just business deals, but client lunches, that sort of thing. It's fueled by alcohol.
It's not. It doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be, exactly.
No,
So
I learned the lesson from that. So I don't do any client dinners or anything like that. Like I literally, I give gifts to clients so they can go and experience with their family and things like that. Or I'll have breakfast.
Yes.
So I make that a big thing, like you were just talking about before, Mags.
Yep.
Breakfast meetings are the best meetings you can do because one, you're productive in it. 2, you can cut the time to your time, and you don't drink. And it's but you know what? I think I continue to think about that 2018 all of the time, and whether or not I should do it again.
You should.
I think about it all the time, but my problem is I just love Barossa, Shiraz, way too much. big Shirazes.
Yeah.
But it's like I'll do. This is why I think I love Lachie so much is he inspires me to do things that I probably wouldn't do by myself. Like 2 years ago, Lachie goes, I'm just deciding I'm going to do 30 marathon rows on an ergo, Concept 2 ergo in 30 days, which is 42.2K on a rower every single day for 30 days. And I said, oh, sweet, I'll do that. And when you're doing, I did 5 with you in the space of a month, and I just decided, geez, I want to be better on the next one. I'm not going to drink, and then just literally just took the whole month off drinking and felt amazing. And do little things like I ran a marathon this year, and I just wanted to go really well in it, and so didn't drink for 15 weeks, and just focused on the training. And work was productive, family was productive.
Can I ask how you went? What was your time?
I did 3 hours 33.
Wow, that's nice.
Yeah.
Man.
No,
Beat me by 6 minutes.
but not that I was trying to compete against you. I was actually.
I knew you were.
Because he did his in Nashville just before. But no, I wanted to do 3 hours 40, and I just trained. I didn't miss a session, and that's the one thing Lachie mentioned before. Like life for me is all about consistency, and if I say that I'm going to do something like I knew I was going to have a big night the other night for a client function. And I was rough as the next day, and Lachie said, oh, we need to do a big run on the Monday.
Yeah.
And I saw you on the Sunday, and I was not great. And I said, I'll be there. And he goes, no, don't worry, you don't have to be there. Rocked up at 10 to 4.
Yeah, it was an early one.
And ready to go, knocked out 18 Ks, and I don't know. I just love the consistency.
And this is the importance, isn't it? Lachie, it just doubles down in having those good relationships and the good people around you. So you got mates like that because it brings the standard up, right?
It raises your standard because on times where, for example, and it happens for all of us, we fall to the level of our standards. So when you're around high performers, your standards are slowly getting higher and higher to the point where you won't tolerate what I used to tolerate a decade ago, or what any of us here tolerated a decade ago. And so even though you may not hit the current thing that you're working towards, they're still much higher. And I think that's where we've got to be more compassionate to ourselves in that everyone here is trying to do the best they can with the information that they have, and you're not always going to be perfect. You slip up, you fail, but the goal is that across a decade you're getting better emotionally, you're more intelligent, self-awareness is improved, maybe your fitness is better, your marriage is better than it's ever been. And one thing from what I was just thinking about when Maddie was talking was a lot of it comes back to how we're framing the things that we have in our life. So quite often if we're removing something from our life, for example, alcohol, we focus on all the things that we're going to miss out on. So I'm not going to be able to have a rosé with my wife or a whiskey with the boys. And when I think about that, I want to drink right now.
That's right. Yeah.
But then it's also
there's that 10%.
But it's all how we frame it. So if we understand, like for me, I understand that that's how my brain works. So instead of focusing on what I'm missing out on, I focus on what I'm going to gain because of that. Like the sacrifices that I've had to make, and a lot of people who are part of this journey have made to make this possible with the marathons. Yeah, we've missed out on a lot of stuff, and I'm about to miss out on a whole heap of stuff. You know, we got a wedding in Mexico I'm not drinking at, and that would have been awesome fun, I tell you. But rather than focusing on what I miss out on, it's like I'm still focused on what we're going to gain and the experiences we're going to have on the marathons because no one else is going to get that.
Yeah.
So it's easy for me to make the sacrifices. It's easy for me to make better decisions because I know what I'm working towards, and that excites me.
Yeah.
And so for people who struggle with that, for me, what's worked well is really flexing the muscle to focus on what I'm gaining, not what I'm losing.
Geez, isn't that a great perspective, Max? Because we were talking about this off air with Magnus trying to do the 26 men spending 12 months off the booze, and isn't it funny? That's the one thing you get back from a lot of your mates. Oh, mate, I've
got an event on. I've got a Bucks party.
In May. I can't do that. I just love having a booze on a Sunday afternoon with the missus. Like you said, it's about reframing it, isn't it? Reframing.
If I can interject just quickly on those 26 people, right, that are thinking about doing it. For the first 3 months, for me personally, in that year I took off in 2018, I separated myself from events. I separated myself from doing things because I didn't want to fail. Yep. But when I got through that 3 months, I felt amazing. Like honestly,
confident.
Amazing. And I thought, do you know what you get a bit over though? Was when you go out to a bar or something and you're not drinking, and you realise how shit some people's chat is.
Yeah, that's right.
And
you see one of your mates,
and you know what? And it's a really good reminder of how nice it is to be fresh and to wake up in the morning, be consistent, and how you actually feel. You don't see the real benefit, I believe, until after 3 months.
Yep.
And then something kicks in and you just feel amazing all the time.
I agree 100%. And I also found just from that that discipline perspective and not being a slave to something, because I find that otherwise every time I went out, you just drank and it became very much a habit. Yep. But I like what you said, Lachie, and I have reframed this from a personal level as far as goals go, that they're not necessarily just goals, but they're just a standard that I set for myself. So now I don't drink, and it's just my standard that I've set for myself. And to me, it takes away some of the discipline on having to force yourself doing it, because now it's just part of who I am.
And the beauty of it is, isn't it nice to see too, Lachie, like for guys like yourself that have got so many men that you're trying to, inspire and get off the booze and stuff. How many of the alcohol companies now, we don't exactly have an excuse. Like back in 2018, Matty, when you were giving it up, no beer companies would have had 0% alcohol beer. No, the amount of companies now that are doing 0%, I think even Solo's brought something out now, 0% alcohol drinks, 0% beers. Yeah. So it's just an excuse now, isn't it? Really?
It has been a slight shift that I've heard from a few health professionals, just from the younger generation, that they're actually spending that money on their health, joining up at flash expensive gyms and not going out and not getting on the piss. So just tell us a little bit about the Man the Can project.
So essentially our focus is helping men get the most out of themselves, become the best version of themselves, and that's unique to every individual. So what the best version of Lachie looks like is different to Mags or Maddie or Connie. So it's about understanding that. And some people have an idea of where they want to go, others don't, because it's new and foreign. But the most simple way to start figuring out things is embracing new experiences and using the feedback to figure out what you enjoy doing, what you want to explore more, what you don't. And that's as complex as it needs to be. And once you start realizing that in order to be better at anything in life, there's a few fundamental things that will work across the board, because it's all connected. Maddie spoke about having a year off the booze in 2018, and you guys are doing it next year, and the ripple effect that it has around your marriage and your relationship, because as you said, you don't have to make more decisions. If I'm on the piss, I'm then thinking about what am I going to eat tomorrow? What time am I going to force myself to get out of bed? Am I going to be active tomorrow, or am I going to just be a slob on the like? There's all these new decisions that I have to make, and I'm not in the best headspace to do that. When I know that I'm still going out to catch up with friends and have a good party and whatever, but I'm sober and I can just carry on with my day as usual the next day, all those decisions are gone and life becomes a lot easier. Yeah. And so that's what we help men do. And obviously what I've found to be the easiest way to make progress in life is doing challenging things and coming through fitness. And much like what you're doing with the walk and talk and your work now, Connie, is if you get men together, men are waiting for an invitation to do stuff out of the norm. Like we have workshops on farms and all kinds of random stuff, and the blokes just want to get away and experience something different. And they're just waiting for that invitation. And we do all dry camps, no booze, because when you take away alcohol, which is a social lubricant, you're forced to start really understanding your emotions, learning to communicate effectively, and build proper relationships. Like if you see our group chats after a workshop, these blokes have never met each other and they've been together for 3 days and they become best mates. And you're like, no booze was involved in that, kicking the footy, having a bonfire, doing some hard things. And it's then about helping men map out, I guess, their standards, as you were saying, Mags, like what standards do they want to uphold in their life that give them the quality of life that they want. So as a father, how do you want to show up? Do you want to be present? Do you want to have great emotional regulation so you don't snap at them? Same with your wife or husband. And then you look at like standards of fitness, you don't miss a training session. Like that's just, Maddie never misses a session. It's freaking mental. Like that's for me when I'm like, okay, well, Maddie performs well, even if he is severely wounded after a big night, he'll still be in there just to go for a sauna and stretch and start moving, whereas some people you won't see them for a week. So it's then identifying, okay, for me to be the best version of myself, what are those things that are going to impact my relationships, how I show up at work? And this is why many people call them high performance habits. And for me, it comes back to my communication. It comes back to the people that I surround myself with, sleep, movement. People say sunlight, all those other things, but those things impact everything. And so they're fundamental, and then you can build, I guess, area-specific habits on top of that. And I think the other thing as well is you don't need to do it. Rome wasn't built in a day. I've been, I guess, working on myself properly for 10 years, and people may compare the growth that I've had to where they're at, and they've only just started, being intentional with their time the last 2 months. So for me, we all have different lives. You've got 4 kids. I don't have any children yet. So it's easier for me to focus on myself and things that I want to improve upon, whereas people with kids have different levels of responsibility. So the free time to learn about these things or to try new things is a little bit different. So therefore your situation and circumstances are different, meaning don't compare yourself to Lachie, compare yourself to your reality. And most people aren't aware of where they're spending their time. They may be between 9 and 5 as I've got all of these meetings, but after hours or before hours, they don't schedule their time. They're not intentional. They wonder why their relationship's falling apart, or they don't have a great relationship with their children, or they're not spending time with their mates. It's because you haven't scheduled time.
So, touch on that for us, Matty, because like you just said, like you're a huge performer in your job. You've got a wife. You've got 4 kids. Well, all your 4 kids are under 12. Is that right?
Yeah, I've got 9, 7, 5, and 18 months.
So going on from what Lachie's saying, and just to give the listeners an idea of how do you, because you're like committed to training every day, plus a huge work schedule. How does that look for you?
And I'll tell you what, hangovers hurt a lot more with 4 kids. I'll tell you that. And they know. And they pick on you too. Like badly. So no, look, it was a while ago, I just was an absolute mess with my time. So I used to try to do, I run my life on 4 pillars. One of them being relationships, whether that be with my family, with my wife, with my children, with my friends. So that's one of them. Second one is wealth and wealth creation. Another one is health and well-being is a big one. And what was the 4th one?
Lifestyle.
And lifestyle, yeah. So I manage all of that, but I used to try and do everything at 110%, even more, 120%. And what I found was that over time, I could do 2 of them or 3 of them really well, but a couple of them would suffer really badly. So I could have an amazing relationship with my wife. I'd be fit as a fiddle, but then I wouldn't, my business would go backwards, and I just couldn't balance it. So I went and saw someone about it because I just was hating what I was doing. I was hating real estate. I was hating everything because I just felt like I was letting everyone down. Yeah. And so this lady I saw said, just drop everything to 80%. Drop it down a notch. And literally took it to 80%. And I wasn't stressed. I wasn't as, because I thought I had to keep selling at this high level. But what happened when I went to 80% is I was becoming happier. I spent more time with my kids. I made the conscious effort that I would take my kids to school every single morning. I'd make them breakfast every single morning. I didn't want to let running marathons or anything get in the way of my family time. So when I do a long run, I'd wake up at 3:30, run. So I'd be back at home to do the breakfast for the kids. So
you should change that though. That's a bad idea.
Yeah, you don't like
no, I hate it. I hate it.
But I do that so it doesn't impact my life. And, and working is I've decided that I do meetings in the office now. So I get clients to come into the office, which saves me time. And then and I'm very, very productive during the day. I change my training times to lunchtime as well. So I do really strong 4 hours of hard work, go and do Pilates or do a gym session, have a sauna and ice bath every day, then go back to work and be really productive till 5:36.
Geez, that's interesting. So you do that every day?
Every day.
That's every day?
Yep.
Interesting.
I take one day off, have a rest day.
Where do you both fit in sleep? Because you touched on it before about sleep being really important.
Everything.
Yeah.
I try and get 8 hours sleep every night.
Yeah. Same with you, Lachie?
Yeah,
No.
I used to always be up at 4, and that's why now I'm sort of starting to say no to the early ones because the recovery is extremely important. But 6:15 is when I wake up. I used to always be up at 4, but I've just noticed if I can stay till 6:15, even if I stay up till 10 or 10:30, I get a decent amount of sleep and I feel refreshed. Whereas as soon as, for me personally, getting up before 6, I'd be running off 4 or 5 hours sleep and everything suffered. I thought I could hustle through it, but my memory was struggling, my mood was struggling, and it impacted work. And
sleep's really important, isn't it?
Definitely.
So, yeah.
I used to run on 4 to 5 hours every day, and that was in building phase. So I think when you're younger and you're having a crack, like it's not as bad as when I'm 43 now. So
and this was before
how do you think I feel?
And this was before kids as well, wasn't it, Matty?
All before kids, no commitments and things. But now it's like, I don't know. I've gone through that sacrifice stage, and now I've decided what's really important in life, right? Yeah. And it's and what's interesting, I think about this all the time, and it's you get one shot at it, right? Don't fuck it up. Like seriously, why wouldn't you just try to do everything to make your life better rather than make stupid decisions and make your life shit? Like
it's compounding is the other thing that I've learned, and particularly with your health. So all these positive things that you're doing, and I love those 4 pillars. And I think that some of my coaching clients, it's sitting down, like you said, looking at their calendar long term, because you're not going to change what's in the diary for tomorrow, but you look at next month and you start putting those big rocks in there first and what those priorities are, and then everything else will just get filled in. Totally. I've started doing exactly the same thing with the gym as far as I just work for myself, but staying away from the gym at those peak times as well, that I can come there and it's around about that lunchtime, get in, smash all those things out. I'm not caught in any traffic, get in there, any traffic coming home. And then, like you said, you're present with your family. How do you focus? Like balance is a massive big thing for me as well. And I find just that resting, that pausing, and then the evaluation. So with your preparation in particular now leading up to this massive big challenge that you've set yourself, what do you do in relation to the evaluation and the adjustment, both physically and mentally?
Balance for me, I guess it's important to establish, is just like that sense of peace and fulfillment within what I'm doing. So I think people are chasing balance, they're always adding more to the plate, whereas I look at like subtracting things. So especially now I am struggling because I'm letting go of clients and I'm really having to focus on the run because I know I'm not going to be my best self to be able to work with other people. I have to focus on myself first. So finishing up with clients is a really challenging one. And even as I've said, like tomorrow is my last official day doing any sort of work stuff where I'm just going to really bunker down, make sure that sleep's on point, nutrition's on point, and I'm mentally in a good headspace. Yeah. And so that for me is going to be the most fulfilling thing because I know that firstly, I've got a lot of pressure because a lot of people have invested in me. So to carry that and not complete it is daunting. But also for myself, I believe in myself to be able to, complete it. But in order to do that, the preparation has to be on point. Yeah. And so now balance and the fulfillment part is just going, Lachie, you've earned the right to have a month where you just focus purely on the run in the lead up, and then a couple of months so let things go. And I know that off the back of that, balance is going to shift because I won't have worked for 3 months. So then it's going to be like, balance will now be like, Lachie, get back to work. Let's do that. And I've learned a lot, especially since I moved to the US around, I was addicted to the grind and addicted, probably what Matty was talking about. Like you got this hustle time in your life where as a bloke who doesn't have children or any responsibilities, I wanted to make a name for myself, wanted to prove myself. So therefore I'm working massive hours. Now that I'm in a new country and I've had the opportunity to reestablish myself and do things that are important to me, I've realized I can be more effective with less time in the line of work that I do, and also be a better husband, be a better person if I structure my day this way. So I'll go back to whatever that looks like once it's completed, and it's just allowing myself the opportunity to enjoy all of those things, because as Matty was just saying, like no one's getting out of here alive. So for me, the best book I ever read was The 5 Regrets of the Dying, and by Bronnie Ware, if anyone hasn't read it, but she talks about people on their deathbed and some of the regrets that they had. And I'm thinking to myself, if these people who have lived many more years than I have, and some haven't, but they're about to finish up, this is what they believe is most important to them, I'd be stupid and naive not to listen to them and think I'll be any different.
Yep.
And because of that, I've chosen I want to work for myself. I've wanted to be a present husband. I've wanted to be the best mate that I can be, and I've wanted to just have as many experiences that I can, because when I'm 95 or whatever age I decide to cark it, I want to look back on I really rinsed it, and I'm just allowing myself to go with the flow of however life looks, because I don't know many 33-year-old blokes who are taking 3 months out of it, or more technically, but 3 months to go do something like this where I'm not making any money. It's an adventure with some great mates and something that's could change my life, or it could not. It could be one of the,
I think it'll change your life.
Yeah. So to be able to do that, and just worst case, I look back and I'm like, what a cool adventure. And to see, it's so humbling to see, have Matty or my family or close friends who believe in me enough to actually allow me to do something like this. That to me, I lay in bed every night. I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe that the guy a decade ago who wanted to be around all these incredible people and didn't want to live, didn't have any confidence, is now in a position where I've got all these people wanting to help me and all of these people wanting to be part of the journey. And that to me is the biggest testament of, like, if you back yourself and if you just hold in, and it's not always comfortable, you find support, you invest in your mind and your body, like you can truly transform your life.
Yeah. Nutrition. I got to ask, what's that look like for you at the moment, and what's it going to look like during the marathon?
Well, the crazy thing is, so my running coach is also a nutritionist, so that's where it comes in very well. But prior to, I guess, working with him, I was eating about 1,800 to 2,000 calories a day, which is nothing. Like
I was going to say, I'm on 3,000.
Yeah, the average bloke
calorie
should be
deficit.
About 2,200.
Wow.
But I just don't. I'm not one of those people who, and my wife's a foodie, and people always talk about when's the next meal, what's the next meal. If I could sleep with a drip in and get fed, that's how I'd choose to live. I prefer to just do everything else apart from eat. However, obviously I've learned the importance of fueling yourself for recovery and these big endurance events. Like when I rode the marathons, or I ran a marathon just randomly on a Saturday a couple of years ago, and I had a can of Solo, and fuck, it hurt. Yeah. And I ran the Nashville Marathon with no nutrition, and obviously it hurts. Then my coach was like, you're doing 60 to 90 grams of carbs per hour, trust me. And so I've started doing that, and like I'm backing up. I'm running faster than I've ever run. And I'm feeling good. So we've had my daily calorie intake going from about 2,000. At the moment, I'm about 3,500, but we're building to 6,000. So
wow.
Even now, like, listen to my wife, she'll be like, Lachie just complains because I'll train, I'll eat. It takes me about 45 minutes to eat a meal because, once again, I'm not a fast eater, so I'm just sitting there hating life, jamming a pizza in my mouth or whatever, just trying to get calories in. And I really don't like that part, but I also have now learned how good you feel when you're running fueled, but also how well you recover from it. And 33, and I've just learnt that. I wish I learnt that when I was playing footy.
But I only learnt it last year. Yeah. So what 6,000 calories look like? What are you eating? You're not eating pizza though, are you?
I'm eating pizza, oh yeah.
You are?
Yeah. So I try to make the first sort of 1,800 to 2,200 calories as healthy as I possibly can. But then after that, I'm so full that you've like chocolate milk, pizza, pasta. Like I'm just getting whatever I can in, and then
Jeez, don't all the listeners hate Lachie right now? It's
Yeah.
like,
mate.
mate, if I have a pizza and a chocolate milkshake, my ass wobbles for 3 weeks.
but
Go and run 170 Ks a week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
that's what I said. Yeah, I said to everyone. They're like, I'd love to do it. I'm like, all right, well, the trade-off is you run 130
Yeah, that's right.
Ks a week. Enjoy that. Like, so it's just even now I'm literally trying to find ways because I can't eat anymore. I really am struggling. It's like putting more, pizza. One of my buddies who used to be 120 kilos, he was over 2 weeks ago and he's like, let me show you. I'll show you, buddy. And so he got the pizza, put more cheese on it, aioli sauce, like just loaded it up with sauces and you get more calories through that. So supplementation, like I'm using a lot of subs.
What subs are you using?
So I'm using Protein Plus. I'm using all ATP.
Yep.
Because it's just natural, which is great.
So you protein?
Protein, so it's all collagen stuff because I got real bad ankle tendinopathy or Achilles tendinopathy, so the collagen helps with that.
Yep.
Then I'll have infrared, which is like a carbohydrate drink that I'll drink during the run, and then just a lot of magnesium for recovery and a thing called Stress Adapt and Rest and Relax, which is more so for the mornings and nights to allow myself to sleep because what happened when I was running the 30 marathons, my body was so fatigued when I'd go to lay down. You could just feel these like electrical pulses all the way down to your feet. And so you couldn't, it's like you couldn't sleep. You're just constantly like tossing and turning. It was horrible. Yeah. And then my sister-in-law, who's a physio, she put me onto the product. And so I've just been using that and I'm using that now just in anticipation.
What's the active ingredient in that?
I have no idea. I'll have to...
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, I did find out yesterday, and that's why I had Steve from ATP on because I'm bro sciencey, but I wish I could remember for you now. But it's worked to treat, and it's allowed me to be able to sleep. So I'm hoping under this level of fatigue, it'll do the same thing because obviously sleep's going to be extremely important. And so we'll see how we go. So that also helps top up the calories. Like within the infrared drink, it's an extra 300 calories per one. So I can drink that pre-running and post-running as well. Plus the protein as well adds in some stuff.
Because I'd imagine that's a big thing for you doing these 58 marathons. It's the recovery part's the most important, isn't it? That constant.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. As soon as you finish that finish line that day, it's full in recovery mode.
So what do you do for recovery? Is you going to float an ice bath around with you?
Mate, we'll be in the snow. I'll just lay out in the snow and do some snow angels. No, so I've got the Normatec boots just for the lymphatic drainage. But most of it is going to be sleep. Like all the whiz-bang fancy stuff is awesome. However, the most important thing is sleep. So we've got a very tight schedule based on the logistics, but how it will work is I know I'm going to get to a point where the last thing I want to do is stretch and the last thing I want to do is eat. But that's my team's job to got a checklist that if I haven't eaten my amount of calories, we're not going anywhere. So I got to make sure that I eat and I got to go through a stretch routine just to make sure that my body doesn't get tighter because obviously it will get tighter. So I'm going through that process. And then while we're driving, the cool thing about the US, there's no seatbelt laws. So I'll be kicking back in the motorhome, laying on the bed just with the leg sleeves on, sort of sleeping. And we've got a couple of physios who want to fly over and be part of it. So if I feel, which I probably will need them, we'll get them to come over. But last time my body was so cooked when I did the rowing marathons that I didn't want to be touched. I just sort of allowed my body to do its thing and eventually it gets used to it. So it's just going to be making sure I eat the right amount of foods. The supplementation and sleep is going to be my main, I guess, the foundations. And then on top of that will be massage, cold exposure, and the leg sleeves.
What about you, Matty? Like as a professional and you're smashing yourself with your fitness, how do you maintain your nutrition?
I just whole foods. I'm a bit upset though. I used to eat at Wild Kitchen every day down at Tenerife. They had they were paleo, but then they couldn't be called paleo because they had sugar there. But no, I just eat whole foods. So now that they've closed, I've been having some meals at what are they, Muscle Nation or whatever.
Muscle Chef. Yeah. They're good.
Muscle Chef, yeah.
Oh, it's just easy. And then I get home and I'll have just either lean chicken, vegetables. I really look after myself in that regard. And I'm only having like 2,000 calories a day as well. And I don't train as much as Lachie, but that's all I need, and I function pretty well. But make sure I've got a big focus on whole foods. I try not to eat processed food and all of that.
Is that the same with your family, Matty?
Pardon?
Is that the same with your family too?
My wife's very health conscious as well.
I was going to say, because it can be hard, hey, once you have kids and that sort of stuff.
And I sort of, James Clear, Atomic Habits changed my life as well. So, you know, we just don't have the fridge stocked with chocolate and everything like that. Because if I'm like I said, I've got an addictive personality. If there's like a block of chocolate, I eat the whole thing easily.
It's not surviving the night.
No, and it's, but no, I'm very conscious of that.
Yeah.
And when I train for something and when I lock it down, I'm unbreakable.
Yeah.
So this is one of the greatest things. So I'll do 3 of Lachie's. I'll do number 1, number 51, and number 58 with him. And I just want to.
So number 1, you're heading to Alaska.
Going to Alaska.
Nice.
I'm taking my son for his first overseas trip too.
How good! What a great experience.
Oh, it's going to be unreal. So although I didn't realise it, Lachie rang me the first day and I was like, "Yep, I'm in. What's the date? Where's the first one?" He's like, "Alaska." I was like, "Beautiful. I'll book the flights. Let's go." Remember you rang me and you're like, "Oh, I'm just looking at these dates." I was like, "Mate, I've already booked. Like, here's the dates. It's done." But then they sent a photo around this morning of what it's actually going to look like. I put it on Instagram. Did you see that on the story?
I didn't, no.
Oh, mate.
Do you have to run with cleats on or?
Potentially, but no. We got I'm running in like a trail shoe with Cortex, like waterproof stuff on it. But maybe, but I think
just depending on the ground. I've been fortunate enough to spend a lot of time in those colder environments, and when there's just snow and ice on your running surface, if you haven't got little steel spikes on there, it could end not well.
I was actually researching because that photo that I sent, I went down that person's page and was looking at it, and they're like, "Yeah, we normally wear trail shoes unless it's like black ice and all of that sort of stuff." Depending on what it is, because in Nashville last year we had the highest snowfall it's ever had.
Really?
And we were minus 15, so it was great to be able to train in that and see. But your whole running gait changes because you're just sort of like really trying to stay up and short steps on top of that.
You do the gumboot shuffle, mate.
You're just like, where is it? Where is it?
That'd be good for my cadence. I've got terrible cadence.
So you'll
that's
really
good. I'll shorten it up.
Yeah, you'll dial that in. But no, it'll be fun. Like all of those things. There's a guy, I don't know if you've seen him on social media, but he was the first person to do a Ironman in Antarctica. It was wild, but I watched all of his content from the moment that he announced it to completing it, and things that he was talking about is like, you know, I didn't realize you'd get hypothermia if you run in too much warm gear because you'll sweat and then that'll freeze and you'll get sick, and the flip side is if you don't have enough on, you're also going to freeze and you're going to get sick. And I was like, so how do I know what to wear? And I haven't figured that out yet. So we'll gauge that by year.
There's a lot of good gear on the market now for that breathability compared to what it was decades ago. That's for sure. So interesting.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
What sort of pace? Like it's okay, I think, you've set that challenge for 58 marathons, and someone might think, well, I'll just walk 58 marathons. How hard can that be? But you've set a pretty cracking pace for yourself too, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm aiming. It's a personal goal. I'm not. So when I say this, the main objective is finishing 58. So depending on how the body responds, I'll listen to it. But my personal goal to make it I say that to make it challenging for myself is I would love to do them all 4 hours or under. So sitting on 5:47 per kilometre pace, because that's just for me what I did a couple of back-to-back marathons in Nashville before I left, and I held that pace, and I understand the snow is going to be a little bit different, but I've been training my heart. I'm so fit that I believe I can do it, and I really want the challenge of like keeping my whoop not out of red zone. And I've got all these personal ones that are going to require myself and my team to make sure that I'm fed, make sure that I'm sleeping well, and looking after all those things, because I would love nothing more than that little fist pump when I'm done to go, wow, you not only did 58, but you did sub 4 hours for all of them, and most people can't do sub 4 hours. So
why 58?
Australia and New Zealand, so all states and territories. So 50 in America, 8 in Australia. So the 8's in I was going to throw in New Zealand, but when I was like Googling states, they're actually regions, and there's 16 of them. And I was like, there's no way I'm doing whatever that is, 74 or whatever. So I just kept it to Australia and New Zealand, and I thought the states because it's a great way to. I never understood why a lot of Americans never leave America. They're just like in their own little bubble until we were doing a lot of road tripping in America last year, and every state is so unique. And the idea of seeing that in winter is going to be such a special and unique experience. And then also being able to do that in Australia, but on foot. I think most of the travel I've done, you're always in a car, or it's just a different and a cool way to see the places. So 58 seems like a good number.
I don't think it's going to be too cool when you're running around Darwin in end of January, early February.
Pleasant. That's going to be
35 degrees from minus 20 to 35.
Well, I think you said last week, Lachie, that you thought that could be one of the hardest ones out of all of them. Coming
it's
back because you're sort of doing it towards the end.
Yeah, it's going to be rough. I think if I can get through, well, I believe the hardest leg is going to be San Diego, Hawaii, Sydney, because it's 3 marathons in about 30 hours. But I believe if I get through 49 before that, I should be pretty cool with those 3. And if I get through those 3,
mate, the last 8 will be easy.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Well, Lachie rang me and he goes, "Oh, mate, I think I'm going to need you in Sydney."
Yeah, I need
because it's he's running at 3:30 in Honolulu.
Yep.
Gets on a plane at 11. Lands in Sydney at 6. And I said, "You got customs too, so I'll meet you at the airport at 8. And we'll run from there."
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
So you're running from the airport?
I have to, yeah.
And then because the next day you're in Melbourne, is that right? So you're
next day's Canberra.
Oh, Canberra, that's right.
Even Canberra, I was just saying to Liam, my brother-in-law, who's doing the driving, I was like, I think we might have been a bit ambitious on the flights. We get to Canberra at 10 and we fly out at 4. I'm like, there's a high probability we're going to miss that flight and we'll have to just get a car and drive to Melbourne because we wanted to get there the night before because there's more. You know, we got a lot more connections and relationships in Melbourne for media and things like that. So we wanted a bit more time there. So Canberra, we're just in and out. But hopefully I'm still sticking to that 4-hour pace.
Yep.
See how we go.
Just get to Canberra and just do the 40Ks just around the airport.
just
jump back on and away you go.
Yeah, obviously the worst case, that's what I'm going to do. But there's part of me that wants to see every place that we're in has something that it's known for in 100%. Its own unique way. So I want to see that because I don't want to just traveling with my wife. So she's in a band, and when we travel with them, you car, radio station, gig, gone, and you never really get to see a lot of the beauty of the places. So my intention is like 2 or 3 days before we're going to a place, it's like, what's the monuments? What's this place known for? How can we're doing a documentary. How can we put this into the story of the day or learn something, meet some cool people? Because I want to actually have those memories as much as we're raising funds. I'm challenging myself. I want to have those cool experiences as well. Yeah. So if I can avoid just running around the airport, I'll do that. And, you know, Sydney, I have this idea, 8 p.m, Opera House, Story, that's not Storybridge, Sydney Harbour Bridge. That'd be amazing. Even though it's going to be hilly as all buggery, it's still, to me, like, that's a cool experience. Yeah. And that's what I want from it.
Just on the hills, I'm not a runner, but I certainly notice the difference when you're going along the flat and all of a sudden there's a bit of an incline. Is there much elevation in your chosen routes?
Yes, there is. Yeah. And the funny thing is I haven't been training much elevation. Montville was a good reminder of how much that's going to kick my ass. But I'm very fortunate. I've always been a strong hill runner. Yep. And as a marathon runner, I'm a bit bulkier than most marathon runners, so I've got a lot of strength in my legs. And heading up to Toowoomba, where my parents live just out near Crow's Nest, and there's a lot of hills, so I'll be training hills for a fair bit. So it'll definitely spike the heart rate, but once again, using the chest straps, and a lot of my running will be going off the heart rate, so I'm trying to keep them in sort of zone 2, zone 3, where I've been fortunate. My heart rate now is about 5 minutes kilometres, and it's sitting around 120 to 130 under fatigue. So
what's your maximum heart rate and what's your resting heart rate?
Resting heart rate's about 37 when I'm sleeping, so it's very, very low.
It's fucking dead.
Yeah, it's pretty low. And then my maximum heart rate's about 172, but it very rarely gets up to that. That's like today's running session's a threshold session, so I'll test that. Yep. But yeah, I'm very lucky it doesn't get that high.
What would you say, like in that last 10 years when you've done so much work on yourself, what's the greatest lesson that you've learned?
To trust your gut. I think I've always, as a young kid, quick little story, like growing up, there's 2 schools in Toowoomba, Downlands and Grammar, which are the rugby schools, and I was going to go to either of them. And all my buddies went to Downlands, and I was getting bullied for going to Grammar. Like if I was to go, and I almost went to Downlands, but something in my gut made me want to go to Grammar. And so I took all the ridicule and the bullying, but I just trusted my gut, and it paid off. I've got so many opportunities, great friends from that. And the same with going to France. Didn't have any opportunities coming my way after leaving the coast, so I was the one who took initiative to send my CV out to all the clubs in Europe, and eventually got a contract off the back of that. And same with when Tommy said, hey, read this book and come to this event. I had to miss a major semi-final for footy to go to that event, but I just trusted my gut, and I've always done that. And I think I've always come out on top, because deep down, as much as many men are feeling confused and they don't feel like they know what they want from their life. If they were to listen to themselves, they do know.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. I've heard a really good saying, and that's lead with your heart and then manage with your head.
Yeah,
and,
spot on.
But it's coming back to that, getting in touch with yourself. You know, I've sort of coined a bit of a phrase recently, like that spiritual fitness, that real inner knowing, and whatever it is that you do, whether it be fitness or whether it be in your profession, that you're staying true to yourself, and you're clearly doing that. Where are you in 5 years?
I would like to be a father in 5 years. I feel if I can continue being the man that I am currently and striving towards, which means, you know, people talk about like materialistic goals and stuff when they're looking at a vision. Definitely have an idea of where I would love to be financially. I'd love to be speaking on stages all around the world, around the run and just mindset and resilience, because I believe what I've been put here to do is bring people together to demand more of themselves, and I do that through challenges. I think that's what I've been given the gift of. And so if I can be doing that while being true to myself, so health being a key pillar. So physically I want to be whatever fitness looks like for me in that phase of life, but as a dad, and mentally whatever that looks like. But then connections, people come and go in your life. I'm not attached to people as much as I am to the value that I can provide to them or they can provide to me. So I'm very comfortable with that. Then freedom. So freedom to me means having the financial means to support myself and a family and do the cool stuff that I want to do, but also having my time. You know, being able to do this on a Tuesday is awesome. I love being in control of that. So freedom is always going to shape decisions. And then adventure. Whenever I feel stagnant and unfulfilled in life, it's because I've allowed work to take control and I haven't been doing adventures or traveling or the things that I want to do. So when I think about 5 years' time, those four, I guess, values to me are going to guide me. And whatever materialistically or tangibly looks like will be what it will be. And I trust myself to make the right decisions as I go.
Yeah. What about you, Matty? Where are you in 5 years?
Oh, I think about it a lot, actually. I've got 1, 3, 5, 10, 5 years. Look, I love what I do at the moment. I went through a rough patch where I was just not enjoying what I was doing, but now I've found this new love for what I'm doing. I love helping. I love helping people. I love people growing around me. So I think I'll be doing much the same. We're in big growth phase with our businesses at the moment, so we're still building. It's funny though, like I'm 43 now, and it's we've had conversations about people talking, what's your succession plan? I'm like, fuck, we're just warming up.
I can see both of you actually. I don't know if you think this when you hear these, especially Maddie, because obviously had a lot to do with Maddie in our line of works. But I see both of you going, especially you becoming a dad, going down that real mentorship type part. You know what I mean? Like you're still involved in your business, but maybe a little bit off the tools and giving those tools to other people to take over the mantle a little bit.
That's a big part of it, and that's like where I get the most satisfaction out of what I do in work. But look, I want to be a present dad as well. Like being in the gig that I'm in real estate, it's my son starts at church here next year. The sporting calendar is hectic.
Poor kid.
But I was literally this year. My son played at Brothers Rugby, and I've got busy Saturdays. I work 6 days a week, and to get the time to actually know what time the kid's playing, they don't set out the season for the times for the season. So I'd guess what time it's going to be.
Is that right? So you never know when he's playing, so you don't know any.
And then so I didn't want to make a mistake. Like I've got a great relationship with my dad, but he's a busy surgeon and he wasn't around for the games and everything. And I wanted to make it. I want to be there, and so I would just book a time gap. And they would change the time every week, and then I'd have disappointed clients, and I'd still show up to my son's footy, but I'd rock up in a suit and I'd be there, watch the game, and then as soon as it was over, I'd be shooting out. And I got a bit of shit for that though from parents, like oh what you're not going to stay, and I'm like, no, I can't stay, but I'm here. So I want to be present. I want to be like just the best dad I can be, best husband I can be. My number one goal is to never, ever get divorced. Like, I don't want to do that because...
Good on you, matey.
Yep.
Like, it's funny as we get older, it's like, I fall more madly in love with my wife every year. So it's good.
That's awesome.
That's awesome, yeah.
Fantastic. Right, last question before we get into the quick fire. What's the single most powerful message that you could leave to our listeners?
build a community of people that support you, like that. You'll know when people care for you because they'll be the ones checking. I got a great group of friends that call me. If you're waiting for a phone call from a friend, like put yourself in that environment, because for me to know that I'm valued and people care about me helps me want to be better because I want to return that. And for me, community and the environment has changed my life massively.
Connie and I have spoken about that on a number of occasions, and I feel that's what's missing right now from society. When you go back in when I was a kid and everybody be out playing on the street, you did have so much more of a community, and then now there's been that everybody's isolating themselves. You know, I think COVID was positive in some aspects as far as people were becoming more community focused. So, mate, very, very well said. Quick fire. You ready?
Just quickly, even on that point, when you talk about actually, no, I've lost it. I just had it then and I bombed it.
Look, social media is ruining so many things. Like the people being present, like just put your phones down.
Yeah.
Seriously, like, you know, you're sitting there and you have a conversation with someone and you can just see, like, this is great because you can sit there. You can't pick up your phone. It's a great conversation, but, you know, just be present.
And I think, mate, it was beautiful what you said, and I know you've spoken about it too, Lachie, with your wife, and I know you and I have had plenty of chats, even on other podcasts and off air, about your relationship and my relationship with our partners. And I think that's also, it's not just about, you talk about becoming a better man, and it's not just about surrounding yourself with the good people, because that's a big part of it, but just your relationship with that partner, that person that you spend most of the time with. You know, I think it's really imperative, that relationship with your wife or your girlfriend, whatever. And we've spoken about it a lot, even when you were in your bad times, hey, when you've had your depression and stuff, having AJ there was like a huge
Support,
supporter.
absolutely.
You brought me back. So when you mentioned you mentioned going into the role of mentorship, I feel all four of us here and anyone listening to this is in that role, because there's always someone who's watching how you think, act and behave. And for me, you know, there's Steve Bidoff, who's a great psychologist, and author. He wrote Raising Boys, Raising Girls, A New Manhood, my favourite author. But he talks about the phases that your kids go through. Initially, it's the kids just love the mum, and then it goes to the dad, and then they're looking for outside influences. So Maddie's kids eventually are going to think I'm cooler than Maddie. I know it's going to happen. But that's just how
True
kids
story.
work. So for me, knowing that one day my friends' kids are going to look to me for advice or as mentorship, I want to be the best version of myself to give them great guidance. So if you're hanging around with shit blokes and you're just doing that out of convenience, understand that if you have a family or people in your life, they're eventually going to influence the way your kids grow up. And if you don't like that, that's where you need to start.
It's a really good point. It's a really good point.
The relationships that you have.
I don't think we can underestimate the power of the example that we set.
Correct.
Totally. Yep. Yeah. That's why you got to be true to yourself as well. Like, you know, I listen to a lot of podcasts as well, like hugely into it. Like I don't listen to music in the car now, just a podcast. And for anyone that's listening to this and they're sitting there going, shit, I want to make a shift in my life, or they think that they can't stop drinking, all these things. There's a really good one I listened to a couple of weeks ago with Gary Brecker, and he had Max Crosby, the LA is it Las Vegas Raiders guy?
Yep.
Listen to that. It's unbelievable. So it's interesting. He talks about it, and you talk about you made the decision not to drink anymore, but you said you've relapsed before and you've had those moments. He said this really amazing point where his life, he looked in the mirror one morning and he said he couldn't recognize himself, and he had this amazing opportunity as a NFL football player, and he decided not to drink. And Gary Brecker said something to him. He said, so you're a reformed addict. He goes, I'm not reformed. I'm an addict. I just choose not to drink or take drugs anymore. And it was this really great distinction in mindset on that. So going back to this, if you're there and you need a light bulb moment to do something about your life, do it. Actually do it. At some point, like Lachie, you changed your life, but you did that yourself. And it was that book and that session that you did. If you're sitting there thinking about it, just do it.
Yeah. That's actually a brilliant point of opportunity. I know that I've talked about that, and some of the guests I've had on there as well, and even some sports people. There's opportunities, like right now, you've got that opportunity to do this. That opportunity won't be there in 5 years.
Exactly.
And people having that ability, again, trusting your instinct, but that opportunity arises, and then grab it with both hands, because it may not be there next year.
Totally.
All right, let's wrap it up with the quick fire questions. Lachie, you ready?
Let's do it.
If you could pick one person to join you on the marathons, who would that be?
I'd love my dad to come. It would be incredible. Or my mum or dad.
What about David Goggins? I'll see if I can organise him for you if you like.
It would be awesome to have him there. He'd probably put me to shame, but just be screaming at me the whole time. I do enough screaming in my own head.
Your worst voice?
Chocolate.
The most scenic place that you've run?
Genk in Belgium. I ran there last year. It was beautiful.
And if you could master any skill instantly, what would that be?
Cooking. I'd love to cook more and cook well.
Your greatest fear?
Not being good enough.
Funniest thing that you've witnessed while you've been running?
Nashville. When you run down Broadway, there is some wild stuff happening down there at like 9 a.m. too.
What about a favourite song that you like to listen to when you're running?
Mr. Brightside, Killers, belter.
What's the hardest thing that you've ever done?
Probably take responsibility for all the shit in my life.
If you weren't a coach, what would you be doing?
Probably still a chippy.
Your go-to favourite place that you always visit when you're back in Brisbane?
Beccafino's. Going there tonight.
Oh, yeah, good one.
Awesome. One thing that you've learnt recently?
The quality of your relationships matters more than anything.
Yeah. If you could give 18-year-old Lachie one piece of advice, what would that be?
You're good enough and you're loved.
A must-have item in your marathon kit?
Ball butter.
I learnt that when I was doing some cycling racing. Comes in
it's a treat. I've only got it in the last week. You have no idea how good
that's
it
got to
feels.
be one of the shorts.
What's the craziest thing that you've ever done that you can share?
Well, I've stolen my mum's car when I was 15. So, and yeah, that's probably one. And she saw me on the
youth crime
highway.
was happening even back then.
Yeah, it was. I was out of Toowoomba, so when she saw me driving to the skate park, she's like, "What the hell?"
Oh, that's gold.
A motivational quote or mantra that you say to yourself during tough times?
If you don't do it, someone else will.
And how do you plan on celebrating after completing that 58th marathon?
Spending time with all the people who've helped me achieve it. I think just talking about the memories, I know I didn't want to elaborate, but I've got a quick little book that everyone who comes on the journey gets to write in, and then I'll get to read through that when it's done. That'll be cool.
Epic, mate. Yeah. Last question. Finish this sentence. I believe.
Life is as good as you choose it to be.
Yeah, mate. Well put, well finished, mate. Thanks so very much for your time. I know how busy you are, and really appreciate both you guys coming in. You too, Matty.
Thank you very much,
all the
mate.
best.
Thanks for having us, mate.
Hey, just quickly for all the listeners, Brisbane Marathon is the last one. What date was
March
it?
20th. So it'll be
March 20th.
Thursday afternoon. We'll probably kick off around 20th. But
Thursday afternoon. Where do we start and where do we finish?
We're still getting that, but if you go to mentalawarenessfoundation.org, all the information will be on there.
Yeah, we'll get your details and chuck it in the show notes as well for all the listeners. And mate, all the absolute very best.
Thanks for having me on.
Yep. We'll get you on back here on April 1st.
yeah.
For the wrap up.
I'll be in a little mood, or wheelchairs or something.
Awesome. Thank you too.
Cheers, buddy.
Awesome co-hosting, brother.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the M26 Fit podcast. Remember, real growth happens one step at a time, and consistently working both on your mind and your body for 26 minutes every day will change your life. Hit subscribe to keep the inspiration going, and don't forget to share this episode with somebody who needs that extra boost. Until next time, stay connected and stay active.